There's a quote that gets thrown around in personal finance circles, and it's so blunt that most people assume it's been softened over time. It hasn't. Charlie Munger, the late business partner of Warren Buffett, one of the most respected financial minds of the last century, said this: "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you gotta do it. I don't care what you have to do. Find a way to get your hands on $100,000. After that, you can ease off the gas a little bit." That's a direct quote. And the reason it's stuck around for decades isn't because Munger had a flair for profanity. It's because the math behind what he said is genuinely shocking once you see it laid out. Most people spend their financial lives doing something quietly tragic, working hard to save money, watching the number barely move, and concluding that they're bad with money or that the system is rigged against them. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes, more often than you'd think, they're simply on the wrong side of a very specific threshold, one that most people don't even know exists. That threshold is $100,000 in net worth, and what happens on the other side of it changes the whole game. Let's start with why the first $100,000 is so punishing to build. Say you're 27 years old, decent job, let's call it $55,000 after taxes. You're doing what you're supposed to do, contributing to your 401k, keeping spending relatively under control. You save $700 a month, around $8,400 a year. After a year, you've saved $8,400. Your investments have earned maybe $400 on top. Total progress, roughly $8,800. That feels okay until you look at what it means in the context of reaching $100,000. At that rate, it'll take you more than 10 years to cross the threshold. And here's the cruel part. The number barely seems to move in the early years. Second year, $17,000. Third year, $26,500. Each year you add roughly the same amount. The work is constant, the reward is invisible. This is where most people's financial motivation dies. Not because they made a mistake, not because they're lazy, but because they're in what I'd call the dull phase, the long stretch where almost all of your progress comes from you. Your income, your discipline, your sacrifices. Your portfolio isn't doing much. The math is almost purely linear. Save money, number goes up a little. Save more money, number goes up a little again. There's no momentum yet, just the grind. Now here's where it gets interesting, because what changes after you cross $100,000 isn't really about confidence or motivation. Those things matter, but they're not the core of it. What changes is the actual math. Let's go back to the same person. They've just hit $100,000. Same job, same income, same savings rate of $8,400 a year. Nothing about their behavior has changed. But now, at a 7% average annual return, a reasonable historical figure for a diversified long-term portfolio, their $100,000 is generating $7,000 in returns every year, just sitting there. That's nearly as much as an additional month's take-home pay, arriving without any extra effort. And that number grows every year. Because now they're not just adding $8,400 in savings, they're also adding $7,000 in growth. The portfolio gets bigger, so the returns get bigger, so the growth gets bigger. This is compounding. And it's the only force in personal finance that actually gets stronger the longer you leave it alone. Here's the number that really illustrates the shift. Going from $0 to $100,000, assuming $10,000 saved per year and a 7% return, takes approximately 7 to 8 years. Going from $100,000 to $200,000 at the exact same savings rate and the exact same return? About 5 years. Same behavior, same discipline. 3 fewer years. Going from $200,000 to $300,000 after that, less than 4 years. And here's the one that really puts it in perspective. Going from $600,000 to $1 million, accumulating another $400,000, takes roughly the same amount of time as it took to save that very first $100,000, except now you're accumulating 4 times as much in the same time span. That's the acceleration. That's why people who've been building wealth for years seem to pull further and further ahead, even when they aren't doing anything dramatically different. The math isn't just working in your favor. It's compounding your advantage faster with every passing year. Before we talk about how to get there, let's be honest about where most Americans actually stand. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the most comprehensive snapshot of American household wealth we have, the median net worth for households under 35 is around $39,000. For the 35 to 44 age group, it's about $135,600. So a lot of people watching this aren't at $100,000 yet. And if that's you, that's not a moral failure. Housing costs, student loans, stagnant wages, childcare, healthcare expenses, these are real headwinds, not personal character flaws. But here's the uncomfortable truth embedded in those same numbers. A meaningful number of people who could reach $100,000 never do. Not because it's mathematically impossible, but because the early years are slow and discouraging, and without understanding why it's slow, it's easy to give up or to spend the money instead. Understanding the threshold is the first step to respecting it. So what actually gets you there? Savings rate, not income. This is the part that surprises people. If you make $120,000 a year and spend $115,000 of it, you're saving $5,000. If you make $65,000 and spend $52,000, you're saving $13,000. The second person is getting there faster despite earning nearly half as much. Income is the raw material. What you keep is the lever. Most people focus almost entirely on earning more, which makes sense because it's visible and tangible. But a 20% raise doesn't automatically move you forward if your lifestyle expands to absorb it, and in a lot of cases, it does. New apartment, newer car, more delivery, more convenience spending. The money flows in and then flows back out. The people who reach $100,000 fastest aren't always the highest earners. They're the people who consistently let the gap between income and spending grow, and then put that gap to work. Make the savings boring. There's a specific failure pattern that's really common. Person has a good month, money sits in checking, they intend to move it into savings, something comes up, it gets spent. Repeat indefinitely. The fix isn't better intention, it's automation. When your 401k contribution comes out before your paycheck hits, or when you schedule an automatic transfer the day your direct deposit clears, you remove the moment of decision entirely. The money moves before your brain can rationalize spending it. This sounds too simple to be worth saying. But the difference between someone who manually saves and someone who automates it is enormous over 10 years. Not because of willpower, because of friction. Automation removes the friction from saving and adds it to spending. That's a structural advantage that compounds quietly in the background. Treat $100,000 as a single-minded target for now. This is where Munger's advice is worth sitting with. He said, ease off the gas after $100,000, not before. And there's a real reason. In the early years, your behavior matters the most because compounding isn't doing much of the work yet. You are the engine. That means this is the phase where consistency and sacrifice have their highest possible return on effort. Every dollar you save now matters more, not because it grows differently, but because every dollar saved before the threshold helps you reach ignition faster. Delayed gratification has its limits, though. I'm not suggesting you live in misery for a decade. There's a difference between thoughtful trade-offs and joyless deprivation. Cooking more at home, skipping the car upgrade for a couple years, choosing a slightly less expensive apartment. These aren't extreme sacrifices. For most people, they're the margin that separates reaching $100,000 in 8 years versus 15. Now, what actually changes when you cross it? The mathematical shift we've discussed is the most obvious, but there are 2 other changes worth naming. Option value. A lot of financial stress comes from having no cushion. When every month is tight, every unexpected expense becomes a crisis. A car repair, a medical bill, a job change, any of these can derail years of progress. At $100,000 in net worth, you have real staying power. Not just an emergency fund, but genuine buffer. You can absorb a bad year without your entire plan unraveling. That stability changes how you work, how you negotiate, what risks feel manageable. Instead of what do I do if something goes wrong, the question becomes how do I handle this setback and keep the long-term trajectory intact? That's a fundamentally different way to move through the world, the psychology of momentum. Once you've proven to yourself that you can build a significant amount of wealth through consistent behavior, your relationship with money changes in a way that's hard to describe from the outside. You've watched $10,000 become $50,000 become $100,000. You've seen the trajectory. You understand, not just intellectually, but viscerally, what happens if you stay the course. Financial decisions start to feel less abstract. You've replaced hope with evidence. That understanding is hard to acquire without having done it. And once you have it, it doesn't go away. Here's what it actually looks like in practice. Know your actual net worth right now, not an approximation. Assets minus liabilities, written down. A lot of people avoid this because the number is uncomfortable, but you can't navigate toward a destination you won't look at. There are free tools. Empower is popular, but a spreadsheet works just fine. Find the gap you're not using. Most people, when they sit down and look honestly at their spending, find at least one category where money is going without much intention. Forgotten subscriptions, delivery fees adding up, the gap between what you think you spend on food and what your bank actually shows. That gap, redirected consistently, is often $200 to $400 a month. Over a decade, at reasonable returns, that's real money, potentially $30,000 to $65,000 in additional net worth. Automate the most important transfers: 401k contributions, Roth IRA deposits, high-yield savings. Set them, then leave them alone. Don't watch the balance weekly. Don't react to every headline. Let the boring machinery run. Protect your progress from lifestyle inflation. This is the one people underestimate. The danger zone on the path to $100,000 isn't laziness. It's the moment something good happens: a raise, a bonus, a tax refund, and spending expands to absorb it before the money is ever put to work. The fix: when income goes up, savings rate goes up first. The lifestyle can expand a little, but savings get the first cut. Here's the thing about $100,000 that nobody tells you when you're starting out. The reason it's hard isn't just that it's a big number. It's that the early years feel like pouring water into a bucket with a slow leak. Money goes in, time passes, and the bucket fills agonizingly slowly. You save for 3 years and have $25,000. 2 more years and you have $44,000. The trajectory is right, but the momentum feels invisible. What's actually happening underneath is that the leak is getting smaller. Not because you're doing anything differently, because compounding is slowly starting to do work. Very slowly at first, then faster, then fast enough that the bucket starts overflowing while you're still pouring. The people who stop right before that point, and a lot of people do, never get to see it. They spend years treading water financially, and then look at someone who kept going and assume that person just got lucky. They didn't. They just didn't quit during the slow part. The first $100,000 is genuinely hard. Munger wasn't being dramatic. The math is patient, and patience is uncomfortable. But the math is also honest. It doesn't care how old you are, what you earn, or how discouraged you feel. It just asks one question: how long are you willing to stay in the game? Stay long enough, and it always answers back.